Del Rio, Texas. Rob Wade and Robert Garza. Two guys who dive. This episode of Two Guys Who Dive, recorded live Saturday, 8 December 2012, episode 45. Where'd everybody go?
Hi, I would be Scuba Bob if I were here, but I'm not, 'cause I'm not here again. So, you're stuck with Scuba Dog. Have fun.
Yep, that's right. Here we are once again with another episode of Two Guys Who Dive, and I'm your host, Rob Wade, and I'm not here with Scuba Bob again. Also, wasn't able to get Troy out here, and as it turns out, they are both attending the very same event. It's that time of the year, folks, of course, Christmas time, and our fair city here does what passes for a Christmas parade and a tree lighting ceremony. This being the tiny border town that it is, I would say that just on my past experiences with it's less than impressive. But, however, the locals do attend the parade, etc., such as it is. They watch Santa Claus do his thing as long as Santa Claus is allowed to do his thing, I guess. So both Scuba Bob is with his family. Evidently, it wasn't a planned thing. Family showed up to watch the parade. He happens to live on the parade route, so he's out watching that, and Troy is out there with his family watching it. As you can guess, I'm not watching it. Parades don't do anything for me. Certainly parades in Del Rio, Texas do nothing for me, so I'm not attending that. I'm here loyal to my viewers here, so we're going to press on with the show. It's been a pretty busy week. For those who have been following, I was off the week before, using up some leave that I had built up over time. You know, since I do work for the government, the way they accrue leave, it's by number of hours per month, and so I had accumulated quite a bit without actually taking any vacation time, or not much vacation time. So you reach a point where you literally use it or lose it. So I was burning some of that off. I had a lot and a crazy amount of vacation time. Of course, you know, a lot of people run into me, well, why do you not take the leave? A, you earned it. B, do you really enjoy your job that much? Well, you know, I do. And I live in an area where every weekend, if I'm not doing something, it's kind of like a little vacation for me anyway. And typically we would take a week-long, a 7-day trip to, you know, the Caribbean or the Gulf Coast or, you know, Florida, whatever, to do our dive trips. But and of course every once in a while we'll take a long weekend and go to Balmorhea to do our dive trips up there. So that's about as much vacation as I really find myself needing. Obviously I got to take advantage of it, of more time, and I have had to with the using up of my extra leave. And but last week I was back to work, and so catching up on things. Anybody who goes on vacation, you know the story. You're gone for a while, and while you may have very capable people taking care of things while you're gone, there's still a lot of things that end up waiting until you get back. A very common one, of course, is email. Tons of email. You know, not all of it is important. A lot of it's junk or just informational. That's situational awareness type stuff. But then there's other things, you know, responding to this, that, or the other thing. And so had huge amounts of email to catch up on. So that was lots of fun. And then, dealing with just some of the things going on at work. I'm in the IT world, but I also do some of the Lean Six Sigma, what the Air Force calls AFSO 21, Air Force Smart Operations for the 21st Century. And looks like we have potential events to work, so I've been kind of getting some preliminary background information, preparing for those events. So it was kind of weird getting back into the swing of things, only to follow it up by taking some more leave. So this next week I'll be eating up some more leave, getting ready for various Christmas gigs coming up. So anyway, I had thought, based on our conversation this past week, that I would have a full deck, with Scuba Bob here. And then he texts me just mere couple of hours before the podcast starts that will not be able to make the podcast. And so I don't know if a good solution, because that's happening too frequently, I don't know if a good solution might be to change the date, the day of the week that we do the podcast. That would be something that he could attend more consistently. But I have to admit, it does get a little frustrating. Although I can talk to a wall, as my wife will tell you, I can talk to a wall easily. So going solo is not a problem. It's just much more fun if we can bounce things off of each other, because while we are simpatico for a number of things, there's still some things. If you followed us on Facebook and Twitter, he's an Apple guy, I'm a PC guy, for the most part. And so we get into interesting little conversations about that stuff. Of course, when I go solo, it gets to be all about the stuff that I want it to be about, and that's perfectly fine. So anyway, they're all at a Christmas parade. I hope they have fun. It would bore me to tears because, quite frankly, most of the places around here, their idea of a good float is a flatbed trailer with some generator-powered Twinkie lights on it and some cardboard facades on there with people dressed up or not. So it's just kind of funny. But anyway, so last week we were all pins and needles because we were wondering if our government was going to decide something about our fiscal cliff. We kind of joked about it, being a Thelma and Louise moment. And it looks like it's still that way. It looks like they're going nowhere fast. So I might find that I have actually extra time off, because if they do go off the fiscal cliff, there's potential that if the plan that was in place, that was voted on by Congress some time ago, falls into place, then of course a lot of government workers may find themselves furloughed, because we have a lot of money that has to be cut automatically as a part of that. So we'll see what happens. And so we're just teetering on the edge of the fiscal cliff. I don't think either side is going to budge. And if you know me at all, you know that I'd rather not see us budge on this particular thing. I'm very principled, and I think I'm much more up and aware of the truth of things and what's actually going on, the deeper situation, than your average bear out there. Unfortunately, the average bear seems to be growing in number and percentage and having no clue. So we're waiting still. We just have a couple of weeks left before government has to make a decision or fall off the cliff. So in other news, we talked about last week that the Christian band that I'm in, Living Water Sound, had a couple of Christmas concert gigs coming up. And we just had one of those this afternoon. Went off very well out at Plaza del Sol Mall in Del Rio. We did a Christmas concert. It was supposed to start at 1:30. There was some few technical issues getting in and set up to the mall to get our gear, because we bring all of our stuff in. And so you have to make sure you have adequate electricity and make sure you have enough room to set things up. That was all fun and pretty much par for the course of doing anything in Del Rio. Just things not prepared properly. So we finally got underway about 2 o'clock, and very successful gig. People seemed to genuinely enjoy it, and finished up about 4 something. And of course, then there's the fun part that everybody enjoys if you're in any kind of production or band, is the tearing down of the equipment, loading it all out, and heading out of there. Not my favorite part of going out and doing these things, but it's a labor of love. We like what we're doing. We like why we do it. We get to do it in a lot of different places. We've done many tours with some fairly named contemporary Christian groups like Cutlass and Fireflight. Just have a great time meeting some great people, very talented people. It's great to have that in common with that caliber of people. So that was successful. We're still, it was finalized last week, but as it turns out, because we all have day jobs, there's a possibility we may not get to be present at the mall again next weekend, next Saturday. That's the 15th of December. So I'll keep you posted if you follow us on Facebook and Twitter, etc. I'll be posting more information. We're still trying to find out if our drummer is going to be available for the gig. That's always a challenge when you've got a day job, working, in this case, supporting aircraft at the Air Force Base. If they're flying or having extended hours, etc., some people have to pull extra work to handle that. So we're still waiting to find out. Of course, normally as we head into the Christmas season, we start slowing down. Pilot training kind of goes to a pause because everybody goes off on their, visiting family, etc., which they should as much as possible. And it's, it can be a challenging still, though, to knock that stuff out. When you're if you're behind or whatever, and we're trying to do gigs around people's schedules because we all have day jobs, which sometimes are night jobs depending on if it's shift work. So, but if you're interested in the local area, keep your eyes and ears peeled for Living Water Sound appearing at Plaza del Sol Mall on the 15th. Looks like it'd be about 11 o'clock in the morning. We're slated to go earlier because there's a number of things going on that day. So, and again, in other news, I'm a big, if you follow us at all, I'm a big science fiction and science fan. Grew up always loving, reading up on Stephen Hawking and Einstein and space travel. Big fan of most sci-fi. All-time favorite series, of course, Star Trek. And although I'll be honest with you, not tremendously enamored of the reboot or the alternate timeline, which is really what it is an alternate timeline for the Star Trek universe, if you will. It's enjoyable, well done. But still not quite sold on it. Seen the movies, but got them. But they got the next one coming up next year, I think. But that aside, I follow a lot of the science. I like the Science Channel and Discovery Channel and those kinds of things. And I am old enough to remember the launching of Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. Voyager 1 was launched in September 5th of 1977. And then Voyager 1 was launched 5th of September in 77. And interestingly enough, Voyager 2 was actually launched earlier. It was launched the 20th of August in 77. So I'm not sure why why they didn't reverse the numbers. I guess it was timing. I guess I could read up more on exactly why. It was probably because one was delayed. But so Voyager 1 has had they both basically had a 35-year trip at this point, and hard to believe. Voyager 1 is 11 billion miles away from our sun, and Voyager 2 is 9.3, so it's on the tail of Voyager 1. But they went in different directions. It's 9.3 billion miles from the sun. Now, interestingly, our scientists, of course, 35 years ago, the scientists had radio telescopes, regular telescopes. We didn't have the Hubble. We had a number of mechanisms for measuring such things as the solar wind, magnetic fields, particle movement, charged particles, etc. Within our solar system and in interstellar space. And they both operate with a number of differences that they expect, both mathematically and through various theories that they have and various measurements that they have. So they had some expectations as our spacecraft, which are still working fine, hard to believe, that especially with that old technology, but that they're now at Voyager 1 is now beginning its process of exiting the solar system. We have regions of our solar system, and one of them, the last frontier, if you will, is the heliosphere. And it's where, once you cross that boundary, you're no longer influenced by the sun. It's kind of similar. This is oversimplifying it, but it's kind of similar to when we launch a satellite or we launch a rocket into space. It has to reach escape velocity, so it gets past the point where the influence of Earth's gravity has direct effect on the spacecraft. So we can go to the moon or launch anything to Mars or whatever. So Voyager 1 is crossing that point, and there were expectations about what they thought the measurements of what the solar wind would be versus the magnetic fields, how they operate within the highways of particles, if you will, because our solar system is obviously it's rotating. So particles want to move that way. If you put a liquid in a cup and you start spinning around with your finger, you see, and you drop something in there that floats, you will see its effect and how it moves faster as it gets closer and slower as it. You will see the effects of these things. Well, similarly, you have particles and solar wind that operates with certain directional patterns and speeds, etc., blah, blah, blah. Within our solar system, when you cross the heliosphere, you kind of move out into interstellar space, and you're affected by the cosmos. You're affected by other things in our galaxy. Well, so they had expected measurements. Well, interestingly, as Voyager starts crossing into, and I've got a little picture kind of describing the artist rendering of what it kind of looks like. Here's a picture. If you look in the center, you see our actual solar system with the affectations of the rings of the orbital paths of our planets. And then you see the general gravitational effect of in the inner sphere there, and you see the two Voyager spacecraft heading out. You see Voyager 1 is on the upper edge picture there, the line going up at a 45 degree straight up, or 45 degree up. Voyager's a little bit has just crossed out of the gravitational field and into the heliosphere, and it's about to push out into interstellar space. And Voyager 2 is just about to cross into that area. Well, as Voyager 1 passed in that area, they started seeing readings that did not match. They were anomalous. They didn't match what NASA and Jet Propulsion Laboratory was expecting to see. Now, of course, it takes a long time for all the data to come by because it's basically squirted to us. And even though radio signals travel at the speed of light, it still takes a lot of time, hours to get the data together and study it, collate it, because it's just, ones and zeros transmitted to back to Earth. And so they have to assemble all that. But I think these anomalous readings that they're picking up, I think we know where these are going. This is what we're going to end up with. I think before it's all over, the machine planet is probably affecting it. They've already detected Voyager. They're going to pull it in, and this is what we're going to find. I think it's all over. You might as well just mark this on the calendars. As a matter of fact, you never know. It might be exactly what the Mayans said. So on the 21st of December, the cataclysm that will befall the Earth will be the machine planet people picking up Voyager and coming to smack us down. So just a little bit of humor there. But it is kind of interesting that as smart as we think we are, as much as our science seems to tell us about stuff, we go out, we send our best and brightest to build the most capable that we can. We have expectations, and then we find that God's magnificent design foils our smartest people. It just wows us. I just think it's cool that and I love science. I believe in science, but I also think that science doesn't explain everything. I think what it does do is typically proves the brilliance of God's design. So I'm all behind science. It's just amazing to see the wonder of how detailed, specific, and varied the design is, and it just is amazing as we see our technology revealing more and more of that each time. Pretty cool stuff. So Voyager 2 should be giving us some more readings here in the coming months. So it'll be interesting to see what differences or similarities. Maybe it'll come up with totally different readings still because of it went in a slightly different direction. But it's going to be pretty cool to see what they come up with. It's interesting. I've not seen if there's still actual photographs, because obviously when they were within the solar system, they were doing flybys of Saturn, Jupiter, etc., and they were getting some good photographs sent back to Earth. So I'm wondering if there's anything for them to photograph out there. As they see things, as they become less affected by the solar wind, the magnetic field, etc., of our solar system, you would think there's possibility that they're able to pick up more things that they were previously obscured to be able to see before. So I'll have to do some research on that, see what they come up with. Okay, so speaking of obscured things, I was doing some reading earlier this week about tech diving, because Scuba Bob and I have talked a little bit about the possibility of getting a little bit into tech. 'Cause we do, we're advanced divers. I'm an instructor. He's working on his dive master, and we do dive deep frequently, never exceeding our experience and training, of course. But we're not fearful about the environment that we're diving in. We don't do any penetration of caves, etc. Although Tara and I have been on plenty of wreck dives where the wrecks are of sufficient preparation prior to sinking. They're intentionally sunk, the ones that we typically get to dive on. And there are swim-throughs. There are areas that you can get into that are overhead, but you have clear exits. They're very, very big exits. It really would be difficult to get stuck in those things. And I've shown videos of some of those. I'll probably in future episodes show some more of the videos of going through some of the swim throughs of these wrecks. And if you go out to like Castle Canyon, there are some little swim throughs. They're like mini caves. They don't go far in, but they are little areas that you can swim through that are cave-like. And I enjoy those as well. I'm very I'm very cautious. Take all the necessary precautions in order to do those kinds of things safely. But if you want to do anything more than those kind of very, very safe diving in overhead environment situations, you need to get the appropriate training. And we've kind of talked a little bit about that. It is, it's additional training you have to go through, and it's more rigorous because there are a number of things that you need to know how to avoid, and things that you need to know how to deal with if something were to happen. There's any number of things that can happen. If you're in a cave, then you're going to have typically a lot of silt that builds up there. Depending on the depth, there might be growth there that you could knock loose. In wrecks, you have not just the specter of silt that can be kicked up and growth, coral, etc., but pieces of the wreck itself. As these wrecks are down there longer and longer times, the metal, wood, whatever the materials are that make up the interior of the craft. I got a sneeze building up here. Those will break down and potentially drop down on you or kick up silt themselves. I gotta clear the sneeze coming on here. Or not. Hate that. And I've got these bright lights here in the studio, so you'd think I'd be able to stare at those and bring on the rest of the sneeze, but it's resisting. So anyway, knowing how to deal with those things, how to avoid kicking it up, and then how you handle it if something happens. There's very specific training for that, and so I was reading up on different techniques and the various trainings that are available, and there are quite a number of hazards. There is a dive operation in Philippines called Scuba Tech Philippines. If you go to scubatechphilippines.com, you can see a number of they've got some great videos kind of showing the training that they do. By no means am I suggesting you go there to watch these videos to count yourself trained to penetrate, because this is not the be-all and end-all. You actually need to demonstrate the specific skill sets that they showcase in these videos in order to properly penetrate overhead environments. And why this kind of thing could be interesting, even in a place like Lake Amistad here, is because there are some caves potentially that you could get into if you've got the proper training, if you know how to set up a tech rig, which typically involves side-mounted tanks, staged tanks for exit, dive lines, and directional markers, etc., going into these so you can get out safely. And so the videos here, and I'm going to pull up one or two to kind of show you what they've got. Here we go. Yeah. So if you go to scubatechphilippines.com, they've got a number of videos here, and this one I find really, really interesting. Let me get this started here. Now, obviously, this is a training video. In other words, that he is leading some divers who are going through the wreck diving training. And, of course, showing them exactly these. He's intentionally silting it up in a way that divers typically, inexperienced divers typically would. Or experienced divers in kind of a bad situation or panic would typically do. Okay, so he's he's saying that he's telling the divers here to grip the dive line because of what he's about to do. Now he's starting the clock to show you how quickly one mistake. Look at all the silt already kicking up, already building. And oh, by the way, when you're using typical open circuit breathing apparatus, which is what most scuba is, if you're not using a rebreather, which will be typically either a closed or a semi-closed rebreather system, your bubbles can actually create a silt-up situation. And your lights become almost useless in this situation. Just coming up on the first minute after the silt-up. Pointing out that without a guideline, exit would be difficult. Now, this is a smaller area, and so if they didn't get turned around in all the silt, if they kept their heads about them, they could, if they had sufficient air, work their way out. And he's noting that the overhead portal is the only visual reference because the silt-up hasn't reached that point yet. Now we're almost a minute and a half into it. Look how all you see is just glare. Got a diver right in front of him. Now imagine if this were at night, or deep enough in an area like freshwater, where light doesn't penetrate this far. Fish. There's the dive line. Visibility is almost totally zero. 2 minutes in. By following the line, they get out. But look at all the silt that's kicked up outside of 2.5 minutes to get out. Look at all that. You can see that's the overhead portal that they could see out of. And obviously don't try this without expert supervision because that instructor knew exactly what he was doing. That's just that's amazing stuff, and it's a perfectly good example of why you shouldn't go into wrecks or caves, any overhead area where you have no direct evacuation opportunity going straight up. If you're in an overhead environment, you try to go straight up, obviously you're not getting anywhere, and then the panic can set in and you end up becoming a casualty, which is something you want to obviously avoid. Diving is both a dangerous and a safe activity. It's dangerous in that you're in an environment that where you don't naturally breathe, and so you have to bring everything with you. You're bringing your breathing apparatus with you. You're bringing the surface down with you. So if you, but it's safe if you are using the proper equipment with the proper training and not exceeding your experience. In the case of, it's very attractive. Let me tell you from experience, it is very attractive. It's very alluring to see a cave or see a wreck and want to go inside. At first, you may be very, very fine with cruising around the outside, especially of a wreck, because there's usually a lot to look at on the outside of a wreck. It's just amazing to be on a submerged ship or aircraft or whatever. But once you've done all of that, once you've looked at the outside, there's just something that draws you, most divers, to want to penetrate the wreck or a cave, certainly, because as you cruise on the outside of a cave, it doesn't take very much time for you going, I wonder what it looks like inside. And so you want to kind of poke your head in, and you kind of want to squeeze in a little bit further. It's like, well, I'll just go as far as my fins. And next thing you know it, you're inside the cave with no experience, maybe not even a light. And suddenly you've kicked up silt and you cannot see your way out. As I've said, there are a number of caves or cavelets out at Lake Amistad, and a number of them are large enough for you to at least get into. And of course, I always dive with the light, and I'm very, very conversant in, of course, buoyancy control, as well as the some of the finning, kicking techniques that you can use. As a matter of fact, I've got one of the videos from ScubaTechPhilippines.com that kind of illustrates this. See if I can bring it up. See if it'll play. Let's try to play here. Maybe not. Nope. That's not the one. It's not the one I thought it was. Let me see if I can refresh the screen here. It does a pretty decent job of showing you a little bit of we're talking about laying the dive line. There we go. Get this going here. And again, this is not for you to come away with thinking that you're prepared to actually do this, but I'm using it as just a way to illustrate, show you that there are a number of
the reel should face the
skills
direction
involved.
Of the dive. The other teammates should remain clear of the path of the line.
There are a number of techniques that you use for actually tying off your dive line, your reel, and there's specific types you use for instance, your beginning one, your primary, what they call the primary tie off. There's one that you do
on the tie will help illuminate the area and also show the diver with the reel your position. It's very easy to fixate on the reel. Make sure to check on the team frequently.
Notice that they're wearing lights that are wrist mounted, as opposed to like a pistol grip type that I usually dive with. Those are a lot more expensive, but they enable you to look at the finning that they're doing there. This is called a
with
frog
good visibility,
kick.
low-lying reefs are best traveled in a wing-on-wing formation. As the bottom or the visibility changes, other formations, such as single file or staggered, may be used.
But these lights allow you to still have a free hand to do things while giving you directional light over what you're handling. There's a strap that goes around your actual palm. This is some great video showing the proper finning technique, and he actually mentions the point about the way your knees are bent.
Like the primary and secondary ties, the number 2 diver can use the light to illuminate the tie and indicate his position at the same time.
proper buoyancy control is key.
Keeping your knees up and in good trim keeps your fins out of the line and reduces the risk of entanglements.
Exactly. And it should make a point here that because there are so many different types of fins, you need to have what they consider power fins. Split fins are useless for this kind of diving. You need power fins, which will be a paddle type, typically not as long as a lot of fins used in regular diving, because you want something that's stiff enough that gives you good kick, but that is short enough that it reduces your ability, your chances of kicking into things, because obviously it's an extension of your body that you're not typically used to.
The line is a team responsibility, so double check how it is tied and how it is laid.
The one on the left has the better finning technique. And that's just an example of the kind of finning that you would have to do, etc. But all of this is part of the in-depth training that you would need to receive in order to do this kind of diving. You know, obviously we saw in the previous video exactly the kinds of hazards that you could run into if you were accidentally finding yourself in a silt-up situation, or you just through your inexperience got into that situation. As an instructor, I even in the open water, I run into this. You know, new divers, they're just getting their skills down. So buoyancy control, trimming yourself out. By trim, I'm talking about how you're oriented in the water. We all are all built differently. So where I might be, depending on the type of equipment I'm wearing, I might be shoulder heavy to where my head always goes down if I'm just floating in the normal supine position, the horizontal position in water, and my feet go up. Another person may have exactly the opposite problem, where their fins are heavy, or they're very solid, and they typically would go feet down. Because I do usually wear the split fins, because I'm not doing a lot of wreck diving, etc. I do have the split fins, and even with 5 mil thick boots, which is a lot of neoprene, I still find myself foot heavy. And so I try to shift as much of the weight that I'm wearing higher up on my body to trim myself out. So obviously if I put more weight towards my head, then that could potentially counteract the fact that my fins are so heavy. When I switch to some of my much lighter paddle type fins, I don't have that problem nearly as much, because they're lighter and my feet don't want to drop. But when I'm working with students, brand new students, that is the last thing that they're thinking about. I mean, they're just trying to get neutrally buoyant enough to where they're not floating up to the top or dragging the bottom. Unfortunately, as we're cruising along out at Lake Amistad, it's not sand, it's silt. There's a lot of silt there. You know, typically a rock bottom, but a lot of silt that's collected in there, because it's where 3 rivers join that make up our lake. So your average student gets out there and their feet are dragging the bottom. When you watch them drop from the surface, do a normal descent, a feet first descent, the natural tendency is to want to make sure you stay upright. And because you can move in all 3 axes, X, Y, and Z axes in the water, tumble and roll, they're struggling to try and keep their feet underneath them. They want to try and stand up. When really, if you're going to rest on the bottom, the more stable position is simply land on your knees. You're much more stable. You can lean back, sit back on your legs. But then, of course, the challenge with even that is, how do you get off the bottom without, when you push off, you're going to kick and create silt. Again, it's all the buoyancy control. But you need to get to a point where, as an advanced diver, you've got, take the peak buoyancy course if you're a PADI diver, or whatever the equivalent is for NAUI and SSI and some of the other scuba agencies out there. And then once you've got your buoyancy down and you've got some of these kicks down, now you're ready to look into getting into the penetration diving. And so there's all these things that you've got to learn how to use. A dive line, as you saw them illustrating how to lay the guideline. Then there's such things as markers, directional markers that you have to place on there, because obviously it's not just enough to have a line in there. You need to know which direction it's going, which direction is out. And you may not be the only person who's ever been diving there. So you need to make sure that there are markers that are easily identified by you. So you'll have typically directional markers, which are very much like an arrow type situation. I thought I had some pictures of it. And then they have what they call cookies. I thought I had something on that. Let me see if I can find. There's a video on this. I'll just show a little bit of this video.
Hi, my name's Bill Phillips.
As you see, and this is from Go Side Mount, which is a tech diving, a wreck diving organization.
I'm a cave diving explorer and cave
If you look at the dive line here, you see this a directional marker that you would carry with you in a kit, a stack of them, that you would wrap into the line as you go along to make sure. Typically, if you're going into a cave or wreck that's already been mapped out, like if you go to Goodenough Springs, there already is a dive line down there that's got this kind of stuff on it. But you may find yourself going off the line to another room in a cave or another room in a wreck, that the main primary bow to stern or opening to back room line is not it's just there, but you're not going you're going off the path. You would need to be able to tie off to this line to follow a line, create a line, or lay a line that takes you, that's going wherever you're going off the guideline. And so this is the type of marker that you use. Now, what they also have is round circular ones that they call cookies, and those are non-directional. They are wrapped in, they're connected to the dive line the same way, but they're just typically just for like marking distance, that kind of thing. What this company actually has is become kind of a growing trend, is what they call a referencing exit marker. And as you can see here, is pretty interesting. They start out to be shaped very much like the. Let's see if there's a close up. I know he has a close up. I was trying to find it. Where is he got that displayed where he's setting it up? He's actually, oh, there's a good view of the marker. Yeah, I thought he had a good close up of the directional. Evidently not. But this is, as you can see, it comes with there's actually an indentation, and there's a lot of varieties of that, as a matter of fact. See, with 3 and 2 across and different stickers, and they're marked, you can number them, etc. The beauty of these are, because of the way they wrap into the line, it's the same that all the other types of markers wrap, but unlike a cookie, the paddle portion where you see the color and the indentations, because that extends out, you can lay it in like a directional marker. So if you're supplementing what's on a permanent dive line with some markers for yourself to indicate what you were doing specifically, not what general directions are on the line, you can use something like this, which I think is pretty remarkable. This is a pretty cool idea. And these are called REM. This is called a REM, or a referencing exit marker. But these are the kinds of things that you would learn. These are the kinds of things that you would learn how to use as part of getting certified for wreck diving or cave diving. Very cool stuff. Let's see. Yeah. So if you are a diver out at Amistad, for instance, and you find that there's some caves, etc., or even some of the submerged houses, etc., that you might want to actually penetrate, investigate, strongly encourage you get the training. I'm not certified in that particular specialty. There are a number of places in Texas that you can get certified to do that, but definitely get certified for that, and be safe as you implement those skills. It is all about training and experience. You know, I've said this before. Patty's philosophy in training is the 3 E's. You've got the education. That's the classes that you take, the courses that you take, get certified. Then the equipment. There's typically equipment, as we've just been talking about. Special types of lights, more lights than even on a night dive. You need to have 2 backup lights when you do this kind of thing. Typically side-mounted tanks instead of back-mounted tanks. You typically will see divers using harness wing type BCs as opposed to the jacket type that most recreational divers use. Of course, learning how to do the dive line, how to use the markers, etc., how to find yourself, how to find your way out of if you lose your dive line, if you somehow let go of it, because you're supposed to maintain connection with it the whole time. If you lose sight of it, how do you find it? How do you work your way out? There's at that same website that was showing with the silt up, they've got a good video to kind of illustrate. Again, it's not meant to certify you in how to do it, but it just shows you how meticulous the process can be in order just to find where you've lost your dive line. As a matter of fact, they do this, they'll black your mask out, which can be disconcerting. It's bad enough if you're out here at Lake Amistad and you're no longer able to see anything because the visibility, because of just natural suspended particles in the water, blocks your vision, cuts vision. Last week we talked about some friends who went diving out at Castle Canyon. They said the visibility was down to about 6 feet. So basically you couldn't see any further than one person away from you. So if you were doing a rock wall dive there, which is what Castle Canyon is, you'd need to hug pretty close to the wall to really see it, and you wouldn't be able to see very far up or down, much less horizontally away from you, to really enjoy the dive. So you'd need to stick close. So you'd get the necessary training to deal with all of those kinds of things. But if you want to get just some introductory ideas, or get a perception of what this is like, go check that site out. There's a number of good videos in there that show you give you an idea what you'd be letting yourself in for if you decide to do something like that. So that's our little helpful hint for this episode. One of the things that I'm big into, of course, gaming, but very specific types. I'm pretty much a first-person type. I like I grew up with the Wing Commander and Free Space and a lot of those types of first person. I love the first person space shooters where you're flying a spacecraft and killing aliens, whatever. I love those. Don't see a lot of those anymore. The Wing Commander days seem to be gone. But also like Day of Defeat and Modern Warfare 3, and of course we were talking about how Black Ops 2 launched and sold 500,000 copies in the first 24 hours. It's just crazy. Well, the latest stats out on how Black Ops 2, Modern Warfare Black Ops 2, or Call of Duty Black Ops 2 is doing is pretty remarkable. They made $1 billion in the first 15 days. That's amazing. And then here's what I really thought was remarkable. 150 million hours of online play. That means that, assuming everybody crammed right through the single player mode, there's in all those there's just a modest single player game. You go through the missions, etc. Okay, so assuming that most people blew through those pretty fast, even 24 hours if they played it straight, and then switched to the multiplayer mode. That's insane. 150 million hours of online play. Where are the lives of these people? That's just, I love playing as much as anybody, but I do balance it out. But that's just crazy. And this was as of Friday, I think, Thursday. Amazing to me. So God only knows what it's up to now. Speaking of milestones, of course, anybody knows me knows that I'm a Windows 8 fan and a Windows Phone fan, both the version 7 and version 8. I've got both. I actually have the Lumia 900, which was the Windows 7.5 phone. Love it. Still works great. And then, of course, I have the slightly larger Windows Phone 8, the Lumia 920, which is just a stupendous, clearly a flagship machine. Love it. But I was noticing that the Windows 8, that's your desktop and tablet, the Windows 8 App Store has already surpassed 17,000 apps, which is pretty good considering this is kind of a new meme for a new direction. Typical tablet stores are like your Apple or Android. Those are basically just glorified smartphones. But this is kind of stepping into that in-between world because that's where Microsoft is taking it. So I was really impressed to see that it's already crossed 17,000 apps. And this is given that there were not a lot of people that got the last version as developers, as application developers, to play with. There were a lot of, they had the developer preview, which everybody could download. I used it. Then they had the consumer preview, which had a number of additional things implemented that would be consumer oriented. And I had that, but it still wasn't the be-all and end-all. There were a lot of things that didn't work. Then they had the release preview, which was close to what it was going to look like or operate like once they went general release. But there truly were general release versions that went out to a select few developers out there. So really, there were things that developers who were thinking about developing for Windows 8 didn't get an opportunity to play with. So given there was at that last leg of development of Windows 8, there was a very small cadre of developers available or that had access to the real meal, their full meal deal, hitting 17,000 this quick in the App Store. And, just like with Android, just like with Apple, just like with Windows Phone, a huge chunk of those are just... they're junk apps, or what I would call proof of concept. There would be somebody like me who's not been a developer getting into it. And by the way, the tools available for both Windows Phone 8 and Windows 8 developing, they're just they're feeding like great tools for some and great videos. If you want to just create your first app from scratch, they walk you through the whole process, and you can download the software development kit, the SDK, for free. So you just have to have a decently powered machine to be able to really utilize the tools. But that's neither here nor there. So there's a lot of apps that are out there that your fledgling developer has created, and so they're there's a ton of flashlight apps, whatever. But there are some really excellent apps out there. I've kind of taken to, as I run across one that's like, you know what, this is the one I want to use for this feature. I've been kind of tweeting out and posting on Facebook my software tip of the week for Windows 8, because as people are starting to move to it, it's not going in droves because they're bad press, haters of this new Metro interface. Just they're clueless. They don't deserve to work on computers anyway if they're that stupid. But they're making all sorts of comments. So it's a jolt and it's this and they hate it and they missed the start button. I'm like, losers. They've talked it down enough that some people are fearful of it. But I'm excited for it. I've loved it from the beginning, and I find a lot of strengths of it. Are there weaknesses? Yeah. With any new direction that a company goes with something, there's always going to be challenges, and there certainly are those with that. And there's already rumors flying around of the next update or next version or update. I'm not sure which it really falls under. They're calling it Windows Blue or Microsoft Blue, whatever, that are going to change a number of things significantly. At least that's what the word is. So what that actually will entail, it's anybody's guess. It may be just significant addition of features that weren't ready for prime time when Windows 8 went out. So, but go out to the App Store, go to the Windows Store. For $40, I tell you, for $40 to go ahead and upgrade to Windows 8, you can still live in the desktop world. You can do everything in the desktop world and just kind of ignore the start screen with all the tiles. But I suggest you really get used to it, because that's eventually where it's all going. You will not see the desktop eventually. So you might as well just embrace it now. It's worthwhile. It works well. I think it's smooth. It's going to be great, as now all your manufacturers are starting to come out with touch screens. Whether it's a laptop, hybrid, or your desktop, they're all coming out with those big all-in-ones, etc. I can't wait till they start really pumping out just regular touch screens as an add-on, because I'll definitely want to. If my machine is fine, why replace the whole thing if all I need is the touchscreen capability? So I'll be happy to update to just touchscreens to get the full Windows 8 effect, because I do find myself with my notebook computer, which is sitting right here. All of my machines are upgraded. All of our machines here at the house are updated to Windows 8, and I find myself often just wanting to swipe the screen and do the pinch and zoom and all that stuff. So it just begs to be used that way. So check that out. Now on the Windows Phone 8 side of the house, or Windows Phone side of the house, Nokia, who is really fully embraced, I mean, they basically kicked Symbian, their old operating system for phones, out the door, and they're fully embraced in the Windows world, pretty much the top Windows Phone out there. They have been the bar setter for supporting their devices, both in pushing out updates to address any shortcomings in the firmware, to special, Nokia-only apps that add so much more functionality even. I mean, they've differentiated. If differentiation is the thing that original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, strive to hang their hat on in any of the smartphone realms, specifically Android and Windows Phone, because there is no differentiation in Apple. They are just it. That's it. You get what you get. You suck if you want something different. But the OEMs that are involved with Android and Windows Phone, they want to be able to differentiate their devices. And Nokia has far and away differentiated their devices by adding tremendous apps. And a number of those have actually been inculcated, added into as part of Windows Phone 8. Well, what they've done now, which is pretty cool, is they've teamed up with XYO.net. Let me switch screens here. To create a website. If you go to xyo.net/Lumia, they have a cool web-based application that lets you plug in what device you have. If I have an iPhone, for instance, and what country, because there are some applications, etc., that are regional. They're country specific. You won't see certain marketplaces in other countries, etc. And so you plug in what device you're looking to jump from. I met somebody the other day who got rid of their Galaxy S3, believe it or not, for a Lumia 920, and he loves it. And this is not a person, because I work in the IT world, this is not a person that I would consider to be savvy. But he absolutely has fully embraced the tiles, the modern UI, the Metro UI, and just loves it. He says it's so much better than he had, the experience he had with the Galaxy S3. So anyway, you plug in the phone you've got, or you're interested in getting, if you're getting your first smartphone, then the country, and then what app you want to look for, for instance, the one thing basically that my wife has expressed that's holding her on to the iPhone is the fact that it doesn't have, that the Windows Phone devices do not have a Weight Watchers app, the tracker, etc. Now, if I put Weight Watchers, I think I have to do two words here. Notice it does list a couple of Weight Watchers apps, but they're not. But if you do a search, so if I would do for the Weight Watchers mobile, then it's going to try and find it, and it says here are the only things that it can find that fit into that category. It does have the Points Plus calculator, and you see it's actually an official Weight Watchers app. And then there's a calorie tracker, another calorie counter, and a fat burning food app, and MyFitness. But there is not an official Weight Watchers tracker app, which is really the key piece that she wants. The Weight Watchers mobile. So what's convenient now, if it had, it would show up here. Now it's convenient. It's got the QR codes. I think this is so cool because if you happen to already have a Windows Phone, it's like, I always wondered if they had this app. Well, you can search here, and then as soon as if it does show up, you just you take your Windows Phone, and you switch it to the Bing mode, and it's got different modes. You can either Bing via the microphone for music, for, Local Scout, or visual. And if you do the visual, it turns your camera on, and you just aim it at the QR code, and it will immediately show you the link to start installing that app. So right from there, you can there it is, and you can immediately install it. No fuss, no muss. It's great. Let's throw another app in here. Netflix. Hello. Catch up. There we go. Okay, so Netflix. I'll click on that. Dun, dun, dun. And there it is. And there's also Flickster and IMDb. So there's a number of related apps that we'll take you to as well. But there's Netflix, and it's the official app, so you could just scan it with scan the QR code with your device, and immediately start installing the app. It's great. So that's at xyo.net/Lumia. Awesome website there. So if you are already a Windows Phone user, that's a great website. Now it says it's search for Lumia. and that's a little bit of misleading because what they're really trying to say is because there are so many exclusive Nokia apps out there. I mean, they really are. They've done a huge job of partnering up with people. And what they've been typically doing is they've been getting an exclusive for a particular app with somebody, and then a few months down the road, then they make it available for other Windows Phone users. So they typically don't remain exclusive. But so you could typically find most of the apps for any Windows Phone there. It wouldn't be necessarily exclusive to the Windows Phone or the Lumia series of devices. So it's worthwhile to check that out. Or if you are thinking about jumping ship, you're tired of, you got Android rage, and thinking about trying out the Windows Phone. If there are must-have apps for you, then that's a great website to check that out. So check that out at xyo.net/Lumia. And here I am all by myself and already running over. That's amazing. Not so much. Let's move into our little administrivia area here. So we used to call this trips, training, and tech, but it's kind of morphed into this. Next Del Rio Dive Club meeting, again at Rudy's Restaurant on the 20th of December at 7 o'clock. Love to see you there, whether you're a diver or not. And, of course, put on your calendar. We've got Balmorhea trips for next year scheduled for 17 through 19 May, 14 through 16 June, 19 through 21 July, and 16 through 18 August. Love to have you there to help us celebrate our anniversary in August. Now, we've also, I hinted at this last week, in anticipation of updates to the XSplit software that we use for the podcasting here, that we would start making available folks to Skype into the show or guest hosts to Skype into the show. Assuming my poor machine can handle it and my internet connection can handle it. And so we're also throwing, here's the website. I've used the bit.ly website to get a shorter address for y'all. So if you want to catch us, if you're watching this on YouTube or Vimeo and you want to catch the show live, every Saturday at 8 o'clock, jump on to bit.ly/2guyswhodive, altogether, 2guyswhodive. And once we open the doors to Skype, you can just check us out or just go ahead and add us in at 2 Guys Who Dive. Just do a search for 2 Guys Who Dive. And now we have, as part of setting up that, because obviously Microsoft owns Skype, and they make it really, really easy for you to log into Skype just using your Outlook account. So we went and set one of those up. So if you'd like to email the show, 2 Guys Who Dive, just send it to tgwd@outlook.com. That's tgwd, 2 Guys Who Dive, @outlook.com. And we'd love to hear from you, and certainly love to hear from you in the chat room if you jump in to the show. Always have that running in the background. Nobody was jumping in there, probably some lurkers, but that's the way to get a hold of us. And of course, if you want to connect with me directly, you can certainly follow me on Twitter. I'm very politically active, so if you're not a political type or you don't like the conservative view, you might not want to follow me on Twitter. But if you do, check me out at RobertCFP, or send me email to robert.wade@setifox.net. And if Scuba Bob were here, you could follow him on Twitter at rsgarza435, or send him email at rsgarza821@yahoo.com. And he'd love to hear from you as well. So, well, hopefully we will have everybody back on deck for next week. We'll see what happens. Of course, a number of people start going out of town coming into the holidays, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully no other parades or other big events going on that would pull Scuba Bob away. But So as always, we love to hear from you. We love to hear your comments, suggestions. Jump into the chat room as we're doing the show, or just catch us on YouTube or Vimeo, Vimeo, or catch us, like I said, catch us live every Saturday at 8 p.m. Central Time, because we do live here right on the Mexican border, or what we like to call northern occupied Mexico, right here in West Texas. So until next week, where we're finished here, we'll see you with another episode of Two Guys Who Dive.